Hello, and thank you for joining us for this episode of AMA's Marketing In. I'm your host, AMA CEO, Bennie F. Johnson. In our episodes, we explore life through a marketing lens, delving into the conversations of individuals that flourish at this intersection of marketing and unexpected. We'll introduce you through our episodes through visionaries whose stories you might not yet have heard of, but are exactly the ones you need to know. Through our thought-provoking conversations, we'll unravel the challenges, triumphs, and pivotal moments that have been shaped by marketing. Today, my guest is Wes Michael, president and founder of Rare Patient Voice. A market research industry veteran, Wes earned his MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business and a BA from the University of Pennsylvania. It was roughly 10 years ago, in 2013, that Wes launched Rare Patient Voice, based on a novel approach to building a market research panel, one that enables patients and caregivers to share their voices with the researchers and companies developing products to improve patients' lives. He structured the company on the core values of being good, a good resource for patients, a good partner to clients, a good employer to staff, and a good citizen to our community at large. Since this inception, Wes has seen the company grow from expanding to the US, to Canada, to the UK, and across Europe and beyond, completing thousands of projects and providing customized services to hundreds of clients. He hopes that Rare Patient Voice's work can help the lives of patients and caregivers who are able to participate in our studies and for those to come in the future. Wes, thank you for lending your voice to our podcast.
Hey, Benny, great to be here. Hello from Towson, Maryland, to all your listeners.
Towson, Maryland. I smile when I think about that. You talk about market research. I think my very first panel interview that I ever participated in as a young marketer was with a company in Towson, Maryland for market research, which is kind of a superpower of Towson, Maryland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, it's interesting in your background. We talk about, marketing and kind of marketing being the launching point. And I'd like to start early in your career, not so much today as your CEO of this venture, which you're going to talk about in a second, but I'm really curious. You started in brand management. Talk a bit about how you started in brand and how that's brought you here.
Yeah. So when I was an English major. So what did I know about anything? And I got out and I started working for this guy that had a computer consulting company, and as an editor, because English, you can help me write these publications, and he started doing surveys. Right, this was many years ago, and he would do surveys about people's word processing programs or their accounting programs or their small business computers, and so I knew nothing about even statistics, but I started tallying it up and writing the results for his publications. And I said, this is kind of an interesting thing. And that's when I eventually decided, let me learn about it and go to school. But I was in brand management, especially in McCormick, best being in Baltimore, McCormick and Spices. And I was manager of the gourmet brand. That's the glass bottle, all the hundreds of spices in the pretty glass bottles, and various other brands that McCormick
Those are
has.
the fancy spices that make me feel like I'm doing something.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Where you don't pay attention to the price. You just buy them. At least that's the idea. That was a cool experience. McCormick's a great company. It's been around a long time, and learn a lot about marketing and marketing without spending a lot of money.
Right.
But proving to the grocery chains why you're worth being on their shelf, showing why you'll outsell the competition, all the little things, and then trying to do a lot. But one of the key things I did, the big brand, all the spices and all the tins and all the plastic bottles, they spent a lot and they call planograms and getting set up. I was on a smaller budget, so I did the poor man's study. And I found, let's put little A, B, C, because they're in alphabetical order, but people didn't know it and they couldn't find what they wanted. I put little clips to the sales guy, and they put little letters on the grocery shelf, and then garlic, so people could find it. So for pennies, I did my part of it to boost sales. So that was there's fun. Marketing's got a lot of fun things.
So I love that your insight is that we're hard coded to be in the library, right? We look or the bookstore. Okay, let's figure out what order they're in.
let's help people find stuff.
So when you're at McCormick, and McCormick is known for its kind of innovation around spices, what was your favorite to work on? I'm curious with having a whole category. Like, what was
the favorite wasn't exactly the spice, it was the recipe.
Okay.
For example, we had test kitchens and they were always working on new recipes or mixes to make things, et cetera, et cetera. And it'd be like, hey, I remember a colleague of mine there. Yeah, you've got this steak recipe is pretty good. Let's try it with a slight twist tomorrow too. So you're constantly you got professionals cooking your steak, and you're like, yeah, let's try this again tomorrow. Like, it's not quite right. So all the different things you do with it, right? Because you're not just eating spices straight. So it's all the recipes and the recipe development and what people are interested in and that kind of thing. So.
As a metaphor, I like you jumping into talking about getting it right and working on to get it right. Talk a bit about what did you take from those years being in brand management, working hard to get it right, that helped you in your path as an entrepreneur?
It's not being afraid, right, to try things because they'll be wrong.
Right.
And then you fix it.
Right.
One of the first things I did at Rare Patient Voice, I said, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to go out to people and tell them they can refer other people they know with the disease.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent a mass email out to the people that we had at the time. And within a few hours, I got one back saying, hey, I love this, but yeah, it's not really right. I know my sister might want to join, but I shouldn't be telling you that. She needs to tell you that. I'm like, he's exactly right. So I was able to send an email out that very day and say, basically, I screwed up. Here's how it needs to work. You tell them, and if they're interested, they tell us. And then to this day, from that little seed, referrals are huge for us in terms of quality and quantity. But jumping ahead there, so don't be afraid to try stuff to get it, because don't assume you got it right. You know how everybody is like, we really looked at this and we know we have it. It's like, yeah, you've missed something. The odds are you assume you don't have it right. Try it. And if you can, something we do all the time, we call a soft launch. Try it small, because then your problem is small and you fix it. You don't have to fix a big problem, you fix a tiny problem. So yeah, it's all about try stuff, experiment, fix it, and then go big.
So in that thinking of experiment and trying things, what prompted you to leave the spice world as you're spice king in that moment, Dev? What prompted you as a brand manager at McCormick to then move into a more entrepreneurial space? And I know you had some other stops in between McCormick and starting, but what really led your journey after that?
Well, it's funny because I had been in market research and then I'd been in brand management. And I remember looking for other opportunities and just assuming I would need to be stay as a brand manager. But this recruiter, remember the old days there were recruiters, it wasn't all online black hole. And she said, you really light up when you talk about market research. Oh, I love that. But that was in my past. And she says, well, there's a lot of opportunities there. It's like, I didn't even know. And it was an opportunity in a completely different area, healthcare. What did I know about healthcare disease? I knew about spices and foods and cereals and such. But I thought, but that's interesting. This was in the late 90s where the laws had just changed. Remember all the ads you see on TV, right? Ask your doctor about X.
Right.
It was illegal to advertise drugs that way before.
Oh, wow.
So that opened up a whole new area where all these smart people at all the pharmaceutical life sciences company, they knew everything about marketing to a physician, one-on-one with a sales rep. They never heard of TV. We would go in. I always predict if somebody's going to ask what a GRP is. They didn't know anything about TV advertising, and it was so it was very exciting to go in. It was like introducing a certain science to an area that had never been applied to before, the healthcare area, and so that's what got me into that. And then all I can say is something, in effect, lucky happened to me that gave me the idea to be an entrepreneur. And it was
talk about it a bit, because we all have these moments, these kind of aha moments. I love that a recruiter she saw your passion that you didn't even see in yourself, right?
Yeah. So a client came to us when my first year I was in this healthcare area working on all this patient and consumer stuff, and said, we're in the hemophilia space. This hemophilia is very rare, but it's very, very valuable to us. We would like you guys to create a panel. We want to do surveys. We want to do interviews. We want to find out what we can do, products, services, to really build our business with these folks. And so we said, like a lot of companies, we bid on it and won it. And so then we said, now we have to figure out how to do it. And we went to the National Hemophilia Foundation conference and set up our table and had our giveaways and recruited and explained it to be, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this wonderful panel, and the client would come to us and say, let's do these surveys, let's do these interviews. And that was all fine. And every year we'd get more people. But 2 or 3 years later, here's where the aha came.
Right.
A client from a different company came up to me at one of those conferences. And she said, I hear you have this hemophilia panel. Can we access it? And well, of course, the answer is no, because if company A is paying for it, company B can't have it. But that gave me the idea. It's like, wait a minute, why not create a panel that's not owned by a single
entity,
client, but that we can, use across all different companies and disease. So I had that idea. I remember coming home and saying that idea. And from time to time, I tell my wife, I don't know if she knew what I was talking about. And I kept that as an idea for many years. And then for me personally and professionally, so that might have been around the year 2000. It wasn't until 2013 that I actually pushed the button and said, let's do this. Let's be an entrepreneur. Let's take the risk, take the chance, and let's create something like that.
Talk to me for a minute, if you remember. What was the feeling like when you start Rare Patient Voice and you get that first client, that first group?
It's funny. So guess what I started with?
Which one?
Hemophilia, right?
Well, of course now.
Right, because I knew it would work, and I'd worked in that category, and I knew there was a lot of activity, a lot of demand in that area. So my wife had been out of the workforce raising our kids, and she was looking for a job. And then I was working for a company, and it was like, okay, they were running short on cash. So, hey, she got a job and had healthcare, right? It's all about the healthcare. Right. It was. And our kids were like 11, 12. And I said, look, I'm going to be home starting this thing. So I'll be around figuring it out. So I got the name and I got the materials and I was ready. And I was set to go to the hemophilia conference. And the week before the hemophilia conference, I got a call from a client, because I hadn't put the word out that much, because you don't want everybody calling you and say, but I don't have anything yet.
Right.
You don't want to over promote when you don't have anything. But I got a call saying, hey, we've been trying to recruit hemophilia patients for a month with no success. Do you have any? And I said, no, but by the end of the weekend I will.
Right.
So that was our first client. I recruited, I think, 136 people there, and they used a bunch of people in their study. And that was our first client and the first paying, first invoice and the first payment that we ever got. And so since then, now we've done 9,000 some projects, and we have done a lot with hemophilia, right, but 1,500 other diseases. Right. So who knew?
I love on your site, you're the rare disease, but also the non-rare as well. Right. Yeah. It's kind of that branding moment in which you kind of outline a lane and you realize the lane is too small for what you really can do, which is the service for any.
Yeah, it's funny. I just assumed that I knew there was a demand in rare, but I knew there's very large panels out there. So if you wanted somebody with diabetes or asthma or something, they already existed. So I just assumed that was covered. But then two things happened. Again, it's all about listening and hearing and changing course. Right. Patients would say, yeah, I have hemophilia, but I also have anxiety or asthma, and should I put that in? And I'm like, Or my friend here, can he sign up? He has high blood pressure. And I'm thinking about it because we were paying everybody with a gift card to join at the time. And then guess what happened? A client came and said, by the way, do you have asthma patients? Do you have anxiety? I said, okay, I'm not saying no to anybody, right? I don't want to change the name because the focus is rare and we started being known by that name. But I want to promote the idea that we have everything. And so we actually did a little research ourselves, just asking people, because it sounds simple, also non-rare. But I remember we said like non-rare 2. And if you do non-rare 2 with an exclamation point, if you glance at it, it looks like non-rare tool, and it just confuses people. So we found different ways of saying it. And that one communicated instantly. Hey, rare and non-rare, you got everything.
You got everything there.
So all of a sudden we branched out. And I just assumed there wouldn't be a business. We do a lot of work in non-rare conditions. And like I like to say, everybody's rare in their own way. They want to be considered unique. Right. And our focus is on the hard to reach, because even if they're non-rare, people want people on a specific medication, a sliver of a sliver of a sliver that becomes a rare patient.
So what surprised you the most? So you've been running the organization for 10 years. And we talked about kind of the lack of panels and opportunity when you first started, give it an aha moment. 10 years in, what do you think about the business space now?
You never know what to expect. It was interesting, just the fact that we've been able to go out and find patients and meet client demand has changed how the industry works. It used to be they said, well, maybe we can get some and maybe we'll talk to a few. Well, then when we proved you could get people that wanted to take part, well, it was like one of those, if you build it, they will come things. Well, hey, wait a minute. Now that we know we can get them, let's do this qualitative and let's do this quant, let's do this survey, let's do communities, let's go into people's homes and see how they'll, all of a sudden it opened up. People wanted to do more and more different types of research. They didn't have to say, well, we can't do anything, or we'll just decide ourselves how to market it. You know, they're talking to their MBA friends at headquarters. What do they know about the people? You got to talk to the users, right? You got to go out there.
Right. I mean, your work really centers on something that's true to brand and core marketing, which is voice of the customer.
Yep.
And finding a way to kind of extract. But in your case, it's less about extraction and more about amplifying the voice. So talk about some of the ways that, you know, you've been able to break through with customer voice, some of the insights that your clients and you have seen in talking to real customers.
Yeah, I mean, because it used to be the focus was on the healthcare professionals, the doctors, the prescribers. It still is. They're obviously very important. And if you're marketing, you know, they're a key component of any strategy you have. But what's really changed is, wait a minute, who's actually using our product?
Right.
It's the patient or the caregiver, the mom or the dad or the kid with the disease, whatever it might be. It's changed the focus. Every life sciences company now has a wonderful phrase. They say they're patient-centric. It's patient centricity. And I'm sure some, you know, walk the walk more than others, but they all know that it's important and they need to be doing it. And the, you know, that's the learning. Patience, you know, back to spices. Yeah. People love spices and love to cook. That's not the same though as my kid has a disease and I got to do everything I can. And I'm going to, typically one of the parents will maybe drop out of the workforce because they become a 24/7 caregiver. And they may have to move to be closer to a treatment center. It turns their lives upside. They hated science in school. Now they're an expert in that disease, and they're teaching their doctors because a regular family doctor doesn't know about these rare diseases. So their lives have been turned upside down, and they are so eager to have their voice heard. Hey, if anybody can hear my issues, my complaints, my wishes, and even if it doesn't help me or my kid, it might help those coming after. It's amazing. It's amazing how eager people are to help. And we like to be generous, and we pay folks $120 an hour for their time, which is, for market research, is pretty. But if you talk to the folks, they always say they don't. Man, that's an afterthought. They go, so happy to share my opinion. If this can help anybody, and then they go, and the money helps. We'll get notes around Christmas and things like that. You made my holiday, a couple $100 here and there. You know, it's because somebody, you think about it. If you're disabled or your family has been put in bad circumstances, you know, you may be on disability. It's really hampered. We've done surveys with our folks. There's a million ways people are upset, right? Emotionally and spiritually and stuff, but financially is certainly one way too. And that's just one component, but it's nice to be able to help that one component a little bit. You know, I always say we're part of the solution there. We're not, you know, solving it, but we're helping.
It's really powerful when you think about it. Rare and many times equals alone. Right. Like but the premise, we come into this, rare means there's no one like you. But what you're able to do with both the offering and the engagement is to create a sense of community. Yeah.
It's so good to know that other people are in the same boat that, and you know, most of the clients, you can think about it, if they're doing research, it's because they have a new treatment generally coming to market. And they want to describe it. They want to see if people understand it. Will they ask their doctor about it? What do they like? What don't they like? I like to tell the patients, it's like a sneak preview of drugs, treatments, medications that are coming down the pike. And who doesn't want to get a taste of that and see that? Because so many people say, I saw that, and then later I saw that drug's on the market. You know, so then they're primed to investigate it further.
Well, it's interesting as we talk about it. Health and wellness and disease and need know no borders, right? There's no real borders in that space. Talk a bit about how you've evolved as a global concern. Because you started here in the US, but then you've expanded in terms of your panels and your engagement. So talk a bit about the role of kind of a global embrace.
Thing. Yeah. So yeah, right. We started in the US and that was easy. Well, easier, right? Because you're dealing with one language. And even though we have all these states with different laws, in general, we're dealing with one set of laws, et cetera, et cetera. But clients kept saying, we love you. We love your patients. I need patients in Europe. I'm not struggling. I'm not getting anything. And I kept saying, oh, let us someday, but we want to continue in the US. Well, eventually we got to the point we said, okay, now it's time, several years back, 3 or 4 years ago. And we can't go everywhere. We said, okay, where are our clients demanding that we go? And the first thing was what they call the big five in Europe, right? UK, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. And so what that requires is language capabilities, websites in the right languages, forms in the right language. So there was a bunch of work we had to do, and then to recruit folks, to get the word out, to work with the advocacy groups, and to work with the events and things that we use to meet with folks. So that was our leap. We're still much bigger in the U.S., but now if we have 100,000 or so patients and caregivers in the U.S., we have like 40,000 in the big five in Europe, and we have enough to do things there. So that last couple of weeks, my colleague Pam and I were in 2 different conferences in the U.K. to spread the word to the European community that we're there, that we have patients, that please contact us, not just for U.S. work, but for European work. In the meantime, we also opened it to patients in Australia and New Zealand. That's mostly because it's pretty much English, right? It's like Canada.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not that we get a lot of demand, and it's not huge populations, but it wasn't difficult. We didn't have to create a whole new thing. We said, hey, they'll kind of understand our American English. We don't have to reinvent the world for them. But the other ones, Germany, Italy, France, and Spain, all new language and folks to help us.
So what's next for Rare Patient Voice? So you've been able to expand, you increase the kind of methods that you have that you're able to use, make available. You've got a really robust community that you've tied in. What's the next hurdle for you?
We think the biggest area is in marketing terms, a whole new product. But it's interesting. It's something that we're really doing now. It's just doing it for a different market, different audience. So right now, most of our efforts are recruiting for market research, right? Interviews and surveys.
Okay.
But there's a huge market for recruiting for clinical trials, the actual studies where people, some of them go on a test drug and some go on placebo. And that is crucial because companies that are coming out with new products, they're not going to be approved until they've run their clinical trial. And the clinical trial can't be done until they get the right people in. For us, it's the same process we have. We have people that say they were interested in research. They tell us exactly what disease they have, et cetera, et cetera. So we send them an email. It's a whole different world on the other end, doing a clinical trial versus doing a survey. But for us, it's sending an email and finding out who's interested, and then working with the companies that are recruiting people for clinical trials. So my joke is, in a few years, we'll say, remember when market research was the biggest part of the company? Because clinical trials could dwarf that, as we move into that. So we're excited to do that. We've been going to conferences that are more focused on clinical trials. We've been working with clients that do that. We're focusing that effort. So that's a fun, you're always looking for different areas to go, like geography and this. And this is a new product area, but pretty much doing what we already do, just for a different audience.
So thinking about your background, and you're now a CEO of a concern, how did your marketing training, how does it show up for you each day?
Yeah.
In the role as CEO.
I mean, it's good that it's kind of baked into your blood, right? Because you haven't, and I don't always think, but it's like, because what we've done, so much of our marketing has been a couple different places. It's been conferences, going out to the target market, healthcare market researchers, general market researchers, now clinical trial folks, rare disease conferences, and then LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been tremendous. It's like you're watching sports and you see a tire ad, and you don't need a tire, but eventually you need tires. Say, I think Michelin was safe. Remember, I kept hearing that. So for us, it's like, people don't see everything we post. But if you post a lot and have a good time, people generally see things here and there. We'll go to a conference. I see you there. I saw your stuff post. Like, people kind of know about it. So they're like, oh, wait a minute. Who's that guy that had the Rare Patient company? And so they'll find us for that. So it's about, marketing terms, reach and frequency, right? So you want to get out to the right market. You want to hit them enough. If you think it's too often, too much, it's not, because they're not seeing everything. They're not paying attention to everything you're doing. And then we keep finding the simplest message is the one we got to get across. We need to remind them that we're not just rare. We need to remind them that we're not just in the US. If they've done quant research, we need to remind them we do quant, and vice versa. So it's the simpler messages that we need to get off, and we need to say over and over again. So very, very simple stuff there. And now we have a wonderful director of marketing who forces that we keep our messages in uniform and integrate stuff and word things correctly and have the right logos and things all used the right way. So all the good stuff that you're supposed to do, we have somebody that makes us do that now, which is terrific.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a pivot because we've talked about kind of success on top of success and trying these things and working. I'd love to hear, has there been a time in which disease audience actually stumped you all, where it was hard to find a panel of willing participants? Have you had one that has been really kind of a challenge beyond the challenge for you?
There are often very much challenges, and we often have it where somebody wants, say, 20 of a certain patients, and we'll say, we'll get you, based on what you're saying, we might get you 5 or so. So we often have to tell clients, we can't get all that. We use it as an opportunity to try to find more. What better way to recruit folks? Like, hey, if you qualify, it's $120 in it, et cetera, et cetera. But it is very often, cancer is it's a huge area. Fortunately, because there's been so much improvement, so many new treatments across cancer. When I first started, I wanted to avoid that. I mean, to put it in a business perspective, I didn't want to spend all this time and effort recruiting folks and have them pass away on me. That's not a good business model. Let alone, it's not nice for them. It's horrible. So I was avoiding that, but things happen. I was introduced to a gentleman, David Wazalewski. At the time, he had this wonderful website called What Next? It was like a social media site of the American Cancer Society. So they had wonderful information about patients, and they would share information on the site. And I would get these cancer requests, and I thought, I can't do this. I said, oh, wait a minute, this guy David could do it. He has all these people. And I called him up, and he says, yeah, but I don't know anything about research. Guess what?
Okay.
We're like, let's work together.
Yes.
So we worked together for years. We still do a little bit. He's long since left that site, et cetera. But that gave us something to sell in those days because everybody wanted cancer and he had the patients. We split the proceeds, and it was a win for all of it. He didn't know how to monetize his panel, and we didn't have a lot to sell. So it was a wonderful thing to do it. So there was a victory when we really didn't have anything, but we happened to find somebody else who had it but didn't know what to do with it. So, but to this day, as you can imagine, cancer, and some of them are very rare cancers and such, and very deadly cancers. So it can be difficult to find folks. But it is amazing. I used to think when somebody came to me and said, we're looking for stage 4 cancer patients. Well, stage 4 is you're in bad shape. It's spread, right? It's spread throughout your body. I used to say, okay, but they probably have something better to do with their time than do a survey or interview. Once again, I was wrong. I mean, at least the ones we talked to, they're like, no, I'm so happy. If I can help anybody, I'd love to give my opinion. So I always have don't be shy. These people, they don't want you to ignore them. They want to tell their story. And again, I love being proved wrong because that's where all the good stuff happens.
It really is. So we're gonna do a little acceleration and time travel learning for everybody listening. So if you had advice or counsel to give to yourself 10 years ago when you started, based on what you've seen and know today, what would you say?
I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try stuff. I mean, I did this anyway, but I probably would do it faster and quicker, right? Try stuff, see what works, move on, network. You never know who needs your help and who can help you. The stuff I would do, but I would have started earlier. When I started this, I said, why didn't I do this 10 years before? But so don't be afraid to take that step and try things. What's the worst that can happen?
So true. So if you were then to accelerate in the future, what do you think you'd want to tell yourself in the future? What do you think the future of this market research is going to be?
Yeah, it's like, again, as I say, what other products are there? We're looking at clinical trials. What other countries are there? It's all about still inviting more and more patients to join. Or whatever other things we have. It's just keep looking. You don't want to say yes to everything, but look at everything with an open mind and then pick and choose. So that's what I think.
I think that's. I hate to say it. I think that's a powerful way for us to end our conversation. I was looking for another question for you, but I was like, be open and pick and choose and be bold. That really covers, my friend Wes.
All right, excellent.
If you have other things you want to share for our audience, absolutely. But I think you kind of nailed it there, my friend.
Well, all I'll say as a plug, please, if anybody has selves or friends or family that have a condition that would love to share about it, they can sign up, rarepatientvoice.com. We're always interested in people that want to share their opinions, and so many people do.
Well, we're really delighted that you joined us today and shared this. And it's really powerful to see how you've taken your brand experience and your market research and turned it really on its head into something really dynamic that helps, as you said, it's good for the patient, it's good for our community, and it's good for the world.
It is. Well, I like to say that nobody loses here. The patients love it. The clients love it because they're getting people faster. We get paid. Even our competitors are our clients. Other research firms that recruit, they come to us. So it's a win for everybody involved. Everybody, and it's great to be in that position because we're competitive and like to do things, but it's nice where nobody's a loser.
It's great, and we get to elevate voices and stories, which we know are really powerful to our role as marketing and to our human experience.
Nothing more powerful than hearing somebody talk about what it is rather than just look at 49% on a graph someplace, So,
well, I appreciate you and spending the time with us and helping to bring these stories, these panels, these conversations to life. Thank you, Wes, for being here. And as Wes mentioned, you can find out more at their website, and you could also find out more at ama.org. So Rare Patient Voice and ama.org. Learn more about market research. And as Wes said, be bold, don't be afraid, and be open to listening to the world around you.
That's right. That's terrific. Thanks, Benny.
Wes, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us for this episode of AMA's Marketing And. I'm your host, Benny Johnson. We look forward to our next conversation.